Hello and welcome to another video. Today will be the start of the top 10 series. I know I've done no video before this one on it, but this will really start it. So, today's top 10 will be 10 final messages from people facing certain death. Number 10 is Nadine Hug's second note. On December 4th, 2009, Nadine Hug was found dead in her shower. The 33-year-old Australian woman had a deep cut on her wrist. Nearby was a razor along with bottles of painkillers. There was also a note left on the side of the nearby ice bar bath. My family, it hurts. Please live like there is no tomorrow, ever, ever, ever. Thank you for being beautiful creatures of this world. Thank you for looking after me. Police and the local coroner declared that Nadine had killed herself, yet Nadine's family, especially her sisters, believed she had been murdered. At the time of her death, Nadine had been in a heated custody battle with her ex-partner Nestor Guizon, and the sisters suspected that he was responsible. Nadine's sisters refused to let up pressure on the police. Eventually, they reached the detective in charge of the case, Julia Brown, who revealed that a second piece of paper had been found beneath the suicide note. The police had dismissed this as just scribble. The sisters insisted on seeing it, and when it was unfolded, the words jumped out to them. He did it. The crime scene officer who had collected the note had read the message as headed it and put it with the other unimportant evidence. Later, the new residents of Nadine's flat found the same words etched into a tile nearby where she had been found. On the basis of the notes, New South Wales State Coroner Paul McMahon overturned the suicide verdict in 2013. He said he believed Guizon had a motive to harm Nadine, had the opportunity to do so, and lied about his whereabouts on 3rd and 4th December. In 2009, he has called for a full investigation. Number 9 is the 98 Rock. Pearl Harbor was not the only US base attacked by Japan in December 1941. Japanese forces also advanced on Wake Island, a small coral Pacific atoll, home to 1,600 American troops and civilian contractors. Japan captured the island by December 23rd. Most of the POWs were shipped to prison camps in China, but 98 remained. In 1943, the US struck back. On October the 7th, after 2 days of attacks, the Japanese knew they faced defeat, and they decided to execute the prisoners rather than let the US free them. The prisoners were lined up, blindfolded and hit with machine guns. One of the captives, whose identity remains unknown, managed to escape and hide. In his last moments, he created a makeshift memorial. He carved the following inscription into a large coral rock near what would become the mass grave for him and his fellow victims. 98 US PW 51043. When the runaway was discovered, the Japanese admiral in charge of the island beheaded him personally, but the man was successful in his attempt to ensure that the fate of the 98 wasn't forgotten. The rock is still there today. Number 8 is the touchingly polite immigrants. In May 2006, a yacht was spotted drifting 112 kilometers, or 70 miles, for those of us who don't live in America, off the coast of Barbados. Rescuers sailed out to meet the craft, which was clearly in trouble. Unfortunately, they were much too late. The rusting vessel was home to 11 young men's partially petrified bodies. Despite being found in the East Atlantic, the boat had set off from the eastern coast of Africa 4 months earlier, bound for the nearby Canary Islands. The men had each paid $1,800 for the opportunity to be smuggled into the Spanish territory. At least 40 other people had been with them at first, but they'd fallen victim to the ocean. When the desperate men realized something had gone wrong, some of them wrote their final letters to the world. One note read, "I would like to send my family in Besada a sum of money. Please excuse me and goodbye. This is the end of my life in this big Moroccan sea." Another said, "I need whoever finds me to send this money to my family. Please telephone my friend Ibrahima Dram." Number 7 is the Hampstead Colliery miners. On March 4th, 1908, a fire broke out in the English Hampstead Colliery mine, trapping 25 miners underground. Their colleagues tried to reach them, but the fire was too much for them, and rescue teams with professional breathing apparatus fared no better. All 25 men trapped in the mine died. One of the rescuers, John Welsby, also died due to heat stroke. When rescuers found the bodies a week later, they saw the dead men huddled together in 4 groups. One group of 6 men had left a last plea for salvation on a wooden board nearby. "The Lord preserve us," began the message. It ended with, "For we are all trusting in Christ." Between the two lines were the 6 miners' names. Number 6. The messages on divers' slates. When underwater, divers communicate with one another by writing on slates with chalk. Since diving can be a dangerous activity, some of these slates inevitably end up carrying some divers' final words. The most famous of these messages was written by Tom and Eileen Lonergan. The American couple were abandoned and forgotten by a towboat off the coast of Australia in 1998, and their story went on to be immortalized in the film Open Water. A slate was later found with the following plea: "To anyone who can help us, we have been abandoned on a Gincourt Reef by MV Outer Edge 25, January 98, 3 p.m. Please help us to rescue us before we die. Help." However, not all diving deaths are as unusual or well known. The cave systems of north-central Florida have claimed hundreds of lives from inexperienced... Yeah, I'm doing a video! Inexperienced cave divers. Among those to die there was Bill Hurst, a diving instructor. He failed to return from a dive in 1976, and a recovery team later found his body. On his slate was a simple message: "I got lost. Tell my wife and kids I love them very much." Number 5. Bill Lancaster's fuel card. Aviation pioneer William Lancaster crashed in the Sahara Desert on April 12, 1933, while trying to claim the speed record for a flight from England to Cape Town. It would be 29 years before anyone read his final words. Around Around an hour after he'd refueled in the Algerian town of Regan, he was off course and crash-landed in the Sahara. It was 1962 when a French army patrol found the wrecked plane. With it was a fuel card on which Bill had written his final message. So the beginning of the 8th day has dawned. This is still cool. I have no water. I am waiting patiently. Come soon, please. Fever racked me last night. Hope you get my full log. Bill. Number 4. The battlefield wheels of the British Army. At the start of the 20th century, the British Army's standard equipment included forms for writing wills. Many superstitious young men, however, didn't want to tempt fate by filling one out. So many soldiers, upon being shot and realizing they weren't going to make it, would scrawl out their desires at the last moment. In one instance, a soldier in Afghanistan was found with the words, "I want mother to have all," written on a rock in his own blood. While most weren't that gruesome, these last testaments were hurried, short and random. Among the items soldiers used were old envelopes, playing cards and edges of torn scraps of newspapers. Lieutenant Joseph A. Child simply wrote, "I leave her all," when he was shot in 1918 during the First World War. The her in question was identified because he'd written the note on the back of a photograph of his wife. Number 3. The Kursk submarine disaster. On August 12, 2000, the Russian nuclear submarine Kursk was on an exercise in the Barents Sea. For reasons that aren't known, an explosion blew a hole in the submarine and the vessel began to sink. Shortly afterward, its remaining torpedoes exploded. The submarine hit the seabed. Those sailors who survived the initial explosions had gathered in a rear compartment. One of the officers, Dmitry Kolesnikov, used the time to write a note. 4 hours after the explosion, he began, 1545. It's too dark to write, but I'll try by touch. It seems there is no chance, 10 to 20%. We hope that at least someone will read this. Later in the note, he wrote that the survivors would try to get out. The final piece read, "Hi to everyone, mustn't despair." Further lines were addressed to his family but were not released to the public. Number 2. Isaac Avery's note to his father. The Battle of Gettysburg, with 50,000 casualties across both sides, was the deadliest and most important in the American Civil War. The address of Abraham Lincoln that came afterward is perhaps the most iconic speech ever made by a US president. Isaac E. Avery scribbled a note with his left hand that read, "Major, tell my father that I died with my face to the enemy, i.e. Avery." Number 1. The final letter of Otto Simmons. Otto Simmons was a German-born Jew who was captured by the Nazis in France. He was held at Drancy, a deportation camp in northeastern Paris that handled 70,000 prisoners over the course of the war. In August 1942, Otto got onto a train bound for Auschwitz. "My dears," he left a letter to his family that read, "My dears, on the way to Poland. Nothing helped, tried everything. Allegedly it's going to Metz. 50 of us in one car. Be brave and courageous, I'll be the same. Stripped of everything in Drancy. Kisses, Otto." He threw the letter out of the train window. Amazingly, it was found by a railway worker who forwarded it to Otto's wife, Marthy. Marthy continued trying to find her husband into the 1960s, but he was never seen again. And just one extra one is the Thowen Stone. In 1887, a stonemason named Louis Thowen made a discovery in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It was a sandstone slab, and it was inscribed with a message that read, "Came to these hills in 1883. 7 of us, all died but me, Ezra Kind. Killed by Indians behind the high hill. Got our gold June 1834. The back of the stone had a further inscription. Okay, doing a video! Fuck off. Got all of the gold we could carry. Our ponies all got by Indians. I have lost my gun and nothing to eat, and Indians hunting me." That was the first episode of Top 10s. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and as always, subscribe.